Is this windmilling or is this wind turbining? I think technically it's windmilling. Then again, it might be wind turbining. I'm not sure.
Hi, I'm Tinny from Ovewr Design, and today I'm out in my factory building. Now when I finish building my day's work, I'm going to go into the studio, take the M1, and completely go through it and give as much information as possible to help people decide which stove to buy when they go to the store. Now I'm going to do this with all 5 stoves, but I'm going to do one at a time. And as I've been asked to do that, it will help people decide, okay, which one is best for me. I'm going to do pot size and everything. So let's get these stoves out of the way and get going.
Hi, I'm Tinny from Ovewr Design, and today we're going to look at the M1 stove from Ovewr Design. Okay, this is as it comes from the factory. Yes, factory. Now it comes without the nipple cap. It comes just the stove and the micro fuel line. It doesn't come with the nipple cap because most of the Ovewr Design cult members have a nipple cap and they don't need another one. So if I sell this with the nipple cap, you're going to have to pay me another $10 and for something that you don't need. It's unfortunate, but that's the way I've decided to sell it. It would be much less confusing to new people if it just came with the nipple cap. But that's the road I've chosen. So it comes with the micro line, but without the nipple cap. Okay, now this is my smallest, lightest, and lowest heat stove. It's top feed, and the reason why it's top feed is if you're using a bottom feed stove, when you let go of the bottle, it'll pull back any raw alcohol that hasn't been captured by the carbon felt, and the cavity will just have, the fuel cavity will just have in it what the carbon felt's absorbed. And for the biggest stoves, that's no problem. They'll burn 5 or 6 minutes on that. But on this smaller stove with this small amount of carbon felt, the the burn time between refuels was only 2.5 minutes. What I decided to do was to make it top feed. Now by making it top feed, the alcohol goes in and goes to the bottom, and when you release the bottle, it can only suck back the fuel as far as the nipple is. So everything from the nipple down is a big pool, or a pool of alcohol, raw alcohol. So that increased the boil time, probably doubled it. Increased the burn time, and it probably doubled the burn time. And that's a good thing for a stove this small. Now, this has a 3/4 wick. It's just a standard Ovewr Design construction, carbon felt wick. It has a threaded 1/16 nipple, threaded in with 1032, so the nipple is replaceable. If you were going to use this in, say, a high heat area like a caldera cone, or in somewhere where you were baking where it was enclosed and it would get really hot, I might recommend taking this 1/16 nipple out, going to the larger 1/8 nipple and going with the heavy fuel line, because that heavy fuel line I think would stand much more flame and heat than the micro line. But I haven't experimented with it yet, so I'm not sure, but that is an option because this is replaceable. Also, the top comes right off as an interrupt friction fit in silicone. And if you overflow your stove a lot and overheat this, it probably won't fail unless you do, unless you really, really overprime it. But if you ever do want to change it, it's easily taken off. Now on the bottom of this stove, there's one extra step on these stoves that I don't have to do, but to keep the Ovewr Design quality up, I do it just for that reason. This stove, the bottom cavity, instead of just being drilled in with a 3/4 drill and having a V-shaped bottom, I go to another step. I go to a 3/4 end mill, 4-flute 3/4 end mill, and I run that in, and it squares the bottom. So the bottom is as deep as is physically possible and as big as is physically possible because it's square bottom instead of having the V of aluminum in it. That's just one of the differences between a poorly built stove and a high quality built stove. And I didn't always do that to these, but I do now to all of them. Okay, now you say if you want to replace the wick in this, This is the wick, and here's a couple of pointers. I roll it just as tight as I can, like I'm rolling a joint or something. Roll it very tight and slide it in. Now once it's in there, it shouldn't be real tight. Should be able to turn it like this fairly freely. If it is real tight, it'll cut down on the volume of alcohol that you can get in, because there's more wick, less alcohol, and your stove won't burn as long as it should. So if you run into that, just take it out and cut like that much off of it and put it back in till it's just a snug fit that won't fall out, but not a real tight fit. I tend to overstuff these when I send them out, because after this wick has burned a few times, it'll tend to shrink and the fit will be about right. So I wouldn't judge it until after I'd burned it maybe 10 times. And then if the wick is still real tight and you're not getting a long burn, then I might take it out and shorten it. Okay, now this stove, in a standard beer can pot with 16 ounces of 50-degree water, this stove's going to take 10 minutes to bring it to a boil. Like all alcohol stoves, if it's in the wind, it's not going to do it in 10 minutes. It's going to take much longer. So, like with all the alcohol stoves, I recommend using this out of the wind as much as possible, and with a good windscreen. The carbon felt windscreen is probably the best one for that. Now, it's designed with a small wick, so it doesn't overwhelm the bottom of a beer can pot. And it's a good match for a beer can pot, either a Foster's or a Dutch beer can. But that's, even with those pots, it's still going to take 10 minutes. How big a pot would I go with it? Well, that depends on what I was going to do. If I was just going to boil water, I'd try to stay with as small a pot as I could that still had enough volume for the amount of water I wanted to boil. And I wouldn't try to boil more than 2 cups, 16 ounces. But I also would use it with a Snow Peak 600, and I have used it with a Snow Peak 700. It'll work with both of them. It'll just take a little longer to boil. I'd add a couple of minutes for each one of these pots, probably bring it up to 12, 13 minutes, which is okay. This stove can be used as a primary stove if you're out backpacking. By primary stove, I mean the only stove you carry, the stove that's going to do all the work. The thing is, it's going to take a while, and you have to understand that. If you're willing to take over 10 minutes to boil your water, and in cold, windy weather, maybe up to 15 minutes, this will work fine. On the bright side of it, it doesn't use a lot of fuel. You can usually boil 2 cups of water with around a ½ an ounce. And where it really shines is if you're one of those people that likes to cook, likes to use a grate oven, or cook pancakes with 1 egg wonder, those type of things where you need small steady heat for a long period of time, like to simmer, this is where it shines. This works very well for ovens and to simmer and to cook pancakes and stuff like that. The heat's almost perfect. So although it's not that great for just boiling water quickly, it does really shine on those other situations where you need a lower heat stove. And because it's remotely refueled, like all my M-Series stoves are, there's no problem. As the wick starts to run out of alcohol, you'll see the edges of it start to glow, just a very bright fluorescent orange. When you do, just fill it back up. Now when you fill it up, watch the wick as you fill it, and you'll see that the flame may go down as the cold alcohol comes in and come back up. But watch the fluorescent burning on the wick. When you see that fluorescent go out, then you know you've got enough in it. If you keep going, you'll overflow it and run alcohol down, and you could burn the fuel line off or something. But that's the best way. Watch the fluorescent, and when it goes away, you've got it full. Okay, I think one other thing I want to mention is this stove will work with a 4-loop pot stand quite nicely. But the 4-loop pot stand is not very big around and not very steady, so you could go to a 5-loop and it still would work quite well, no problem. The extra loop won't make that big a difference, and that's a little more steady. You can also use a 5x23, that's a 5x18, and it will work with that. So it will work with any of the pot stands quite nicely. That's the beauty of the wick stove. They're not fussy about height. So that, I believe, ends the review on the M1. Once again, if you buy this, you will need a nipple cap if you don't have one. The nipple cap is on the first item on the home page. It's SKU number 42. 4 and 8 ounce nipple cap with micro nipple. And if you want to buy anything extra for this, you could buy an extra fuel line, and that's in there under micro nipple. I think in cooking gear. And that's all you'll ever really need for this, unless you really, really, really abuse it. Then you might need a bongo nipple tube for the body, but that's very, very unlikely. Okay, that's going to end the M1 review, and the next review I do will be on the M2. Probably won't need to go quite the depth that I went with this one, because the M2 is very similar, and I'll be basically just repeating myself, which I do a lot anyway. I'm Tinny from Mini Bull Design. Get out and hike, take a friend, enjoy the great outdoors, and more important than anything, be nice, leave no trace, and have a really great day. Bye-bye.